choice is such a complicated thing, period. Like choice of how do I want to feel about this, or choice about what I want to do about it. Ah, gosh, it's so many layers. Yeah. And so sometimes you're right. It's about dissecting that a little bit to find, is there a level here where I do have some choice and control on that? I think you're hitting on this autonomy piece that yes.
Yeah.
But also really interesting research about when one of these needs isn't being met, our likelihood for depression and anxiety goes up. And I've gotten so much mileage out of this, the work done by DC and Ryan, this last skill here. Just we use it also as a leadership model. I mean, if you're talking about leading a team, their competence, their autonomy to do their work, and their connectedness to you, it's a great model for relationships, leadership, and it's so fundamental. Which I love. You could get really, and I like simple. I mean, there are some theories about motivation that have 30 to 60 different facets, and I'm like, that might be great, but who has time and energy to look at that? I don't, in a practical sense. And also the normalcy of just all the stuff we're talking about. Everything we talked about in here is just, a normal human response. And if we're not feeling well, there's most of the time a really pretty good explanation as to why we're not feeling well. And then
I've heard the crisis we're in right now, the social, environmental, and economic crisis, is best described as a leadership crisis.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
So to me, what you just said goes right into this, is that's what, and it's what Tammy and I are doing at the next course, but this is trying to find leadership of yourself first and foremost, right?
Right, for sure.
And then when you're organizing, so to me, that's helping understand how we respond to challenges as a community beyond that. And then, so I think there's a lot to be said about teaching leadership skills simply because we need a societal leadership shift rather than we need a new leader to replace somebody, right?
Yeah.
So very different time. So I think it's why I appreciate the work so much, Brad.
Yeah, it's so fun to explore these areas and just how deep you can go down some of these pathways. And I tried to lay that out at the beginning, that this is surface level. We tried to take 200 years worth of research and make it in something that a layperson can work on a skill every week, and feel like they understand it and can do something with it.
Right.
And, but you could take, a semester for each one of these skills. There's just piles of research and books and things rabbit holes that you could go down. So I'm interested in that kind of feedback. It's like, did we go deep enough on some of these? Was it too surface level?
Welcome to the last class. You've made it. This has been tremendous, and I am thrilled with what this work has meant just in my life and in the work I'm doing, and feeling like something easy that's added to what I'm already doing, not in a way that it's piling on, just lightening the load, if you will. That's what I feel like this has been for me. So thank you very much, Brad. Oh, I'm not saying thank you, and I shouldn't be. Hey, Tammy, I was trying to avoid it. It's new language. So this is ongoing, and I've sent everybody in my last email. I just wanted to touch on, I'll put it in the chat here too, but I've got a link for a survey. I did just mention to Brad, if he wants any changes, I might add some questions from him and then notify you guys if that happens. But any feedback you can offer me either privately or on our social media. That being said, I'm exiting Meta as of tomorrow. So that's everything I wanted to just cover off in terms of housekeeping. And then Brad, if you can just remind or what you had mentioned when we started, how you want to structure today before you go into the lesson.
Hi, everybody. Hope you had a decent week and skill training, and that your challenges were limited. I know we had Joint Commission visit the hospital here, which is a accrediting body at the federal level. So when they show up with 7 surveyors, many of them physicians, to look at your entire process in your hospital and tear it apart and tell you what you need to improve on, that's always when you talk about challenge, for us, that's an anxiety provoking situation. So I have worked all week to apply the skills here that we are working on. And like we said at the beginning, you're not ever going to be perfect at this. And that's not the goal. So setting that expectation, but these are skills we can make improvements upon. I work all the time, just like you all, to try to catch myself and use the language and remind myself of the pieces that I can influence and which ones I don't have control over. So I thought today we would just for sure touch on this last skill, but then also maybe when we go into the breakout rooms, just overall, we haven't dug into, your personal plans, and I hope you've been adding to that as we go along, but that's the last section there. We put, some of those handouts on page 116, it's just a one-page look at the whole skill set. So if you ever want to take a picture of something to have with you, that's a good page just as a reference. But hopefully you've been adding, into that personal plan as we go through each skill, what's meaningful for you. And then I talk about a meaningful picture to take, something as a reminder. That's your personal plan on how you apply these skills in your life. So might just take a little bit of time in your breakout groups to talk about where you're at with your plan, if you feel good with that. And then I think we'll use that time at the end to see if there's any questions around your plan. Or I always like to talk to people too and ask about, where do you go from here? What are some of your concrete steps that you can keep this alive and moving? Do you want to take a picture of this and print it out and post it up where you're in your workspace? Do you want to laminate it and do something with it, put it on a coffee cup, get a tattoo of it? I don't know, something to where keep it front and center, because this is just the first step. All right, so this skill to me, so this is motives. And I talked a little bit last week. I think you all are familiar, super short chapter, but I was telling Jenny, so much mileage out of this work by DC and Ryan on this self-determination theory. They really did a lot of great work to boil down a big pile of research on what motives for human beings, what motivates and drives our behavior. And there's some motive profiles and theories that have up to 60 different aspects of motivation. And I was telling the group that that's just too much. We like simple, we like to keep it straightforward and something that you can use. So competence, autonomy, and relatedness seem to drive a lot of what human beings do. And it's also, their research is really interesting, the part about if one of these areas isn't being met, that our likelihood for depression and anxiety goes up significantly. It really makes sense to focus on these three areas. That first one, that competence. So if we're not feeling good at something, or I think this comes up a lot. I teach a nursing class, new nurses, third-year nursing students before this, and I think about their challenges with competence that are coming over the next few years in their life, or a new teacher, in education. When we're working with students, obviously they're trying to learn competencies in all kinds of different areas as kiddos. So when someone's not feeling competent, that need is still banging away in there. And like when we talked, with teachers in education, if Johnny's not too good during reading class, not too good at reading, and he's got to be there several hours a week, that's the time he could really find out that he's a pretty good class clown during reading, and he can feel competent at doing that because he's not so competent at reading. And we do the same thing on the job, in relationships. I also think this is a super great leadership model, working with your team on competence. And then the second one, autonomy, that's kind of the opposite of micromanaging people. You provide them enough competence, training, and support, but also do you provide them enough autonomy to do the job on their own, have freedom to choose and make choices. So when we apply that to ourselves, it's like, where are some areas do I not feel like I have choice? And I think Jenny was bringing that up before we hopped on all here together. Are there areas in my life where I don't feel like I have a lot of autonomy? Sometimes it's financial, sometimes it's political, sometimes it's in relationships, sometimes it's at my job. And so, if I'm not feeling well, or feeling distressed or dysregulated, is that maybe a reason? And that would be pretty normal to feel, distressed about if I don't feel like I have a lot of choice. And we also talked about the layers of choice. Do I have to feel, I have some choice about how I think about things. I have some choice about what I want to do about things in response to them. So that's an area, if you kind of define it and put it in a box, you can see where you can move inside the box a little bit. There's some wiggle room there. And then the last one, relatedness, is just such a huge one. So we know people don't do well in isolation. If we're, we've seen the epidemic of loneliness does not lead to a good place for human beings most of the time. And if we're not feeling connected, I also see, just in the work that I do, human beings can tend to do some really unhealthy things to try to find connection. And so to just be aware of, if we're not feeling connected to someone, how do we go about establishing connection or reestablishing connection? I'm going to quit talking about that, but that's kind of my overview. Good. It's only 10 after. So I'd like to send you all into your breakout rooms, unless you have any questions about those three. But this one's pretty straightforward. I think chapter's only 2 or 3 pages, which is like how we like it, short and sweet. Take a look at your reflection questions and process those together. And then if you want to have some discussion around each of the 3 areas, that makes sense to me. And then overall, how you feel about your plan and being able to commit to that going forward. But that would be good.
See you on the other side. So we'll go about 20 minutes on this, just talking about, and then we'll come back in and talk about the program overall. So
Okay.
be ready to do that.
Excellent.
As well. Okay.
Perfect.
Good luck, everyone. See you on the other side.
Everybody's back. We're doing good. The one thing that came to me, one reflection thing that came to me that I just want to throw out there is, for me, that competency piece builds that self-esteem. And then when you feel good about things, you're able to be more successful.
Very good. Exactly.
So I'll just.
All right, we're back. Looks like we're back.
Yeah, let's mic drop on that, Tammy. You kind of hit the whole thing all together there. Well done.
Any themes anybody wants to talk about? We can talk about that skill. That's pretty straightforward, unless someone has something really. I think we kind of covered it, unless something really came out of your groups. I mean, we hit each one of these in our group, and it was just interesting to talk about the different facets at work or at home, and then some places where we feel a little bit stuck. It's like, how do we kind of ferret out little areas where we maybe do have some control? Also kind of saying, accepting, like I think Lisa was kind of talking about some areas where she doesn't have a lot of control, but accepting maybe that I don't right now, but I could change things in the future to get that, but I'm gonna just get through this for now and see if things change. But also knowing that I do have an option, like in the future.
Just the fact that we're all in different stages of our lives, but we can all relate to what everybody else is going through. And there is a light at the end of the tunnel, everybody. And it's not Trump Gaza video that he AI generated.
Well,
sorry.
We were all sort of talking about our work stress, and Tammy's retired, so we were looking to Tammy for hope for where we're trying to get to have more autonomy and competence and choice and connection where we want it. So it's really cool to see and hear from her perspective.
I could be
on
really
that.
good at being retired because I love volunteering. As soon as, like, I like being, having an income is really nice, but I don't like connecting it like to what I do, if that makes any sense. But I get a lot of fulfillment out of my volunteer work.
So we did talk about that in our group, like that sometimes if our job is like going through a hard time right now, it does sometimes spawn or prompt these side gigs, like this outside of your normal job. You start up like an entrepreneurial kind of spirit and you get your cup filled by doing what you really like to do outside of your normal job. And I mean, people have built businesses out of that. They've done all kinds of amazing things with that. So I think that's interesting. That's that motivation that's coming from I want to feel confident. I want to have choice in my life. I want to have some direction. And maybe if it's not happening here, I'm going to direct it over there. That was really kind of interesting too. How about the other groups?
We talked a lot about how we want to use this next, Brad. We were talking about, well, the 2 educators here were talking about how applicable it is in our own lives and the appreciation of seeing other perspectives talking about this issue rather than, coming from it as we're teaching children this skill. Now it's, oh, right, this does apply to me too. And how does it also apply to my life? And realizing that a lot of this is a personal reflection more than potentially even the kids that they're dealing with. And for me, potentially the people I'm working with. I would say I agree with Lisa. I get a lot of enjoyment about the actual work I'm doing, but not necessarily with the things I can control, or less control, I should say. That's where these skills really can come in to help alleviate the way I manage those things as they come at me when I don't really have much choice in that. So I think that's what, and then we were just talking about applying this like with other schools and potentially like I'm excited to try and get it out to some organizations in a union type way too, Brad. Like I think there's a lot of opportunity there for the workforce, especially safety. That's something I haven't explored yet. So anyway, those were the things we were getting excited and ahead of ourselves and thinking about also how it translates to these kiddos and ourselves in our lives, right? Like I was asking that question because I was really interested in how do you feel about putting this work out to kids and knowing what it might seed in terms of their ability to navigate challenge in their own personal lives. And Lynette rightly said, just like it is for us, it's going to help them in their lives. So yeah, it was just really neat to hear how it can be applied so broadly and how it's so inclusive. That's the last thing we spoke about, is that because the language is so common and it's so simplistic, it allows this to be accessible to the most amount of people. And that's what really gets me excited about it.
I appreciate that feedback, and that's how it was intended. It's hard to put something together that can cut across so many different areas of challenge and different types of people. And so if you think of things, of something that's left out, please let me know. We're always, every frameworks are always improving and growing, and we're trying to do better with it, but also to keep it small enough and practical enough to where we can teach it to people and practice with them in a clear way. Anybody feel like sharing quickly anything from their plans, or you feel okay about where your plans are going forward? We talked about the body's response to challenge. We started clear back there, remember, with warning signs and fight or flight and safe and calm, and then moved up through, these big sort of scary, can be intense things called emotions, and we labeled them, express them in healthy ways, and take how much ownership and control do we have over those, or influence. And then this last section was just about our thoughts and rules and our motives. So that's kind of, we talked at the beginning about tearing this process of responding to challenge, tearing it apart, breaking it into chunks, and now trying to put that all back together again. So I just wonder if anybody could move through their plan pretty quickly, or just kind of read some, here's my warning signs, here's what I'm going to do for my safe and calm, that is kind of your final product,
I can take a stab at one, and hopefully that'll
Sure.
prompt some others.
Yeah.
So for me, my warning signs are, I feel a punch in my stomach. My voice will start to raise. My foot will start to, like, maybe that's even earlier. My foot will start to shake, like and now I can see that right away. Oh, my foot's going, what's happening, right? And so I'm looking to that now, which is really good. Creating safe and calm. I think I mentioned I've been going back to yoga class, like in a group. I used to just do it at home, and I haven't had the same sense of connection and consistency. So I'm glad to be putting that back in my life as something. And then Chris and I have been listening to music more again, so that's been helpful for us. The labeling our emotions thing, I think that's an ongoing conversation, so I'm excited about that. We're talking about, breaking down things as they're coming at us and how we can work through that. Yeah, taking ownership of my emotions. I think that being able to know that I can choose how long I'm irritated with something potentially, and also the intensity. I'm really glad to know, and I've learned that I can step away from things for the most part. That's really important for me, Brad. I was taught that we've worked through things. Like when I was young, it was like, nope, we're sitting here until we work through this. Yeah. And now it's like, whoa, that's a big part of the reason why we struggled to work through things. So yeah, I think that is really huge for me. Expressing my emotions in healthy ways. I think the being mad part is the one that I'm going to probably focus on most. I don't quite know what that looks like differently, but I think finding safety and calm will help me be able to at least give it time and space like you've offered. And then, to look at the patterns of the always speak. I think that's really huge. There's just been I said it here today. What if I don't feel like I have any choice? And you were like, well, but do you? Because you could also.
You picked up on that. That's good. And
Yeah.
I try to say it in a way that's not upsetting. It's just as a reminder, but right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great job. Yeah.
But that was an always statement. And then I think just breaking down what I'm feeling. So it's like we went through the feelings, but then also, why do I have those feelings? I feel like that's the last step here, is like, what are my motives and why are they being impacted? And I think, again, it's just really simple, Brad, and really effective for that. So
thank you for stepping through that. I think that's important to kind of step through that, because that's what you can do with yourself in the face of these challenges, is step right through it, just like you did right there, and apply that to each one of these challenges that we face, right? And it just becomes, almost becomes a lifestyle, I can tell you, of trying to create balance, a recipe for creating balance in the face of challenge. And that's what we're trying to do. It doesn't make all challenge go away. It can prevent challenge, because we know that challenged people, and when we're not responding well to challenge, we often create more challenge for ourselves. So in that way, it can reduce challenge. But our goal is to try to put ourselves in that balanced position to respond in the most healthy way to the next challenge that's coming along. Well, I just want to say thank you to all of you for participating in this experience. And I always learn a lot, just as much from all the participants as, and try to make things better and easier for people to understand. That's my goal. If you do feel like this was helpful for you, I'd be happy if you went out and put a review out somewhere. That's, again, if you liked it. If you didn't like it, just forget anything I said about that. But we are trying to spread the word. There's a lot of plenty of suffering and stress and challenge out there for folks. And we've just seen people benefit. And if we can do that, we want to be able to do that. So
I was going to just talk about from skill 3, right? Because the labeling your emotions, like figuring out why you're feeling a certain way. I've been finding myself the last couple of weeks being really irritated for like nothing around me that's irritating me, but just being shopping or whatever, and somebody goes in front of me or something, and just getting like, why did you do that? And recognizing for myself that, okay, like just talking to myself and going, oh, well, it's got nothing to do with you, right? That taking ownership piece and recognizing that it's got nothing, right? They're not doing it to annoy me. They're just doing it because that's the natural thing to do. Same thing as getting cut off in traffic. But just being aware of those things and doing that self-talk, I think has really come forward for me.
That's huge.
So that's one big one.
Thank you for sharing that. That's so huge.
Yeah. I totally agree. I just want to add that I'm excited. Like, I've noticed myself be able to say, oh, that person's dysregulated. And then I'm like, okay, now what do I do with that? Right? Because it's like, how do I help them? Maybe that's something, you're trying to do it here. I think humor is a really big thing, Brad. I'm glad that you appreciate that. But yeah, do you have any tips for us, as I guess a question for you, in terms of like when we do see it? Because now we have the gift. Thank you for giving us the gift. So how do we have the grace with that gift when we see it, if you will?
So there is this kind of secondary aspect, and you got to kind of be in a place with your skills, but we are modeling this behavior through our actions all the time. And so to help someone else co-regulate, the first thing, we have to be able to do it ourselves, because if they see us as somebody who's dysregulated, right, they're not gonna be like, oh, please show me how to be regulated. It doesn't mean we never show emotion, right? All those myths, it doesn't mean we never show emotion. It's how we show it, right? So we have to be, we step through these. But I think to me, it's that part of sharing with that person that this is a skill set, because when you're in the middle of dysregulation and you have no idea, remember when we first started, that first thing I asked people to do with their lens for behavior was to see it as a skill set, instead of just an expectation that everyone should have this behavior because you're 25 years old, you should know all this. Well, if you don't, you don't. And so I think one of the best things, we have to start there when you're trying to help anybody learn this skill set, is to normalize what's happening with them. Everything we've talked about here is a human being's normal response to challenge. And if you can just imagine that with no skill training, you know what that looks like. And so what we're trying to do is just get some skills on board. Will you let me help you learn a couple of skills? I know this doesn't look like much fun, you know, being in distress, suffering, failing at all these things. And so sometimes you can come to that angle with them instead of, it's non-judgmental. It's just around helping someone like a basketball coach. I can see you want to be better at basketball. I know some things like dribbling and passing and stuff we can work on pretty easy to get better at that. Will you let me help you with that? Is a really good angle, but that co-regulation is huge. So for us to be able to step somebody through that, we've got to be able to do it.
Cool. So don't try it is what I heard.
No,
I'm just kidding.
you're there. You're getting there, right? I mean, everything you shared, you have a plan, right? And so remember we talked about knowing versus doing. So I just want to make sure everybody's in a good spot where they have a plan about skills, but implementation is key. So practice. Those muscles aren't going to get any better just sitting in a page in your book here, right? So got to do something with them. And we have plenty of opportunities to practice, right? There's no shortage of challenge. So
Agreed. Okay, just a bit of housekeeping. I would love your feedback in whatever form you can give it.
I just want to say that thank you for this course. I'm buying my sister one of these books. She works as a teacher as well. And I think it would tremendously help her and help with her students too. So thanks for the time and the effort that you guys have put into doing this. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Brad. We'll be in touch. Thank you. This has been incredible, guys. I'm thrilled. Thank you for being here all the way through it. And I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
nice to know you all. Nice to meet you all. So and spend time together. It's really cool. I'm going to miss visiting with you all once a week. So
me too, Brad. It's been amazing.
Yeah. Wish you all the best. So
thank you so much. Okay. Take care, everyone. Have a good rest of your week.